Hi, I'm Mike McGee, CEO of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. With me today is Mary Geiske of the Pennsylvania Manufactured Housing Association. Mary and I actually met through a CEO roundtable that we do on a quarterly basis with housing-related industries, and we were having a sidebar conversation about how you get a number of calls from realtors across the Commonwealth. And that kind of set up this opportunity to talk to Mary about maybe what are some of the differences between manufactured homes, mobile homes, and traditional housing.
Well, I guess I'll start off with the mobile homes because a lot of people don't realize this, but mobile homes aren't even built anymore. So the difference between a mobile home and a manufactured home is really the year that it was manufactured. So manufactured homes came into existence with the federal HUD code in 1976. So since 1976, mobile homes no longer exist except for the product that was built prior to that. And so the major difference between manufactured homes and traditional homes, as you're calling them, that would be the code that they're built to. So a manufactured home is built to the federal HUD code, as we call it within the industry, HUD standing for the Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C., that oversees that code. And then traditional homes are built to your local state, or your state and local codes. And today in Pennsylvania, that's the 2015 IRC, International Residential Code.
Okay.
So that's your major difference, codes that they're built to.
So what are some of the general rules or best practices that realtors should be aware of when selling manufactured housing?
The number one, before you sit down with somebody that you're listing a home for, and I'm assuming you mean like if they're listing a home. So before you sign on the bottom line, make sure that that seller has a title for the home that they're looking to list. And this is whether the home is in a land lease community, meaning that they own the home and then they rent the land, or if the home is on private property, because that title is paramount, and even more so today since Dodd-Frank and the lenders are really, that's their top priority when they're looking at financing these homes. So they need to know that there's a title on that home. Or if it's on private property, the title could be retired. But know that before you sit down for the listing, because if you do your job well and quickly, when you get to the closing table, you have no title, then you have no closing. And those are the biggest questions we get.
So to be clear though, explain what kind of title you're talking about, because I think our average person watching this is thinking a deed that you file with the recorder of deeds.
Correct, sorry about that. I'm so used to being in my world. So on a title, what I'm talking about is a motor vehicle title. So manufactured homes are titled. Versus, and that's something we should have brought up, I guess, back on the other question with the traditional homes, that they do hold a vehicle title.
So what are some of the questions that you typically get when a realtor would call you when they're trying to work within this kind of a transaction?
The biggest question is, how do I know if there's a title out there? And that is all in contacting to do a title search. Again, a title search in our world is a little bit different than a title search in your world. So in our world, it's called a vehicle title search, and you use a DL, David Larry 135 form, which you get from PennDOT. And that is basically you need the VIN on the home, the vehicle identification number, or AKA the serial number. They're one and the same when you talk in the title world. And you use that VIN then to research with PennDOT to see if the title was ever applied for. And that's our first step. And sometimes they don't have the VIN. The seller has no clue what that is. They don't have any information about the home. So it's a lot of digging and asking of questions and trying to determine if we can back into it. With the manufactured home, there's a data plate that goes out the door with the home. Every home that's built, it's put on inside the home. That data plate has all that pertinent information. They also have what's called the HUD label on the outside of the home, and it's a red label when it comes out of the factory. Living in the home, oxidation happens with outside, weatherization and all. So sometimes they are not red anymore, they might be silver. But that is also a pertinent piece of information that we gather from, your folks when they're calling in with these challenges, because we can then back into finding out what the VIN is if we don't know that right from the beginning. But that's, without the VIN, then you're kind of lost on finding anything to do with that home. So, and then trying to sell it is a big challenge, mainly if you've got a person who needs to go to a bank to get the money to buy the home, because the lenders just won't lend on it without knowing that information.
Okay. So are there also significant differences realtors should be aware of if they're actually renting mobile homes or manufactured housing as a leasing agent?
Like as a leasing agent, I think the biggest thing there is the fact that Many times they don't understand, in a land lease community, the Manufactured Home Community Rights Act is the primary law that you go to whenever you start looking at the relationship between a resident and the community owner or the manager. What that does is it spells out what you can and can't do within that relationship, and the required disclosures and letters, if you will, if they go arrear on the rent, if they are in breach of lease. We have mandatory notifications, whereas under the Landlord-Tenant Act, some of those notifications can be waived. We can't waive any of ours. So that's a big, area where we have people entering, not knowing that, they've done other types of rentals, but not manufactured housing, land lease, that we, do a lot of educating on, making sure that they get out the notifications, the proper methods, and then making sure that they don't think that they can waive it, because we get that asked of us a lot.
Okay.
So the primary is, we call it Act 261. It's called the Manufactured Home Community Rights Act.
So that, in summary, a lot of our guys are usually dealing with the Landlord-Tenant Act. That doesn't necessarily apply in those types of communities, then.
Correct. It's your secondary. So whatever's not addressed in the Manufactured Home Community Rights Act, then you go to landlord-tenant. Like security deposits is a big one. We don't have that in our law, so then we'll jump over to landlord-tenant for guidance there.
Any other hot button issues that we haven't touched on that you think are relevant to realtors?
Well, the only other one we get a lot of questions about, in fact, I just had one yesterday. Realtors can sell homes in land lease communities. What they can't sell are new homes. So they can sell pre-owned, and then of course they can sell them when they're on private property as well. But for new homes, you have to be a licensed dealer to buy the home from the manufacturer, and anyone selling on behalf of that dealer has to be a licensed salesperson. And we get this call many times where they'll say, okay, well, I have a client that wants to buy that home, but it's, being sold by a dealer. They can share commissions. There's not like a sharing of commissions because you're operating under two different acts. And we have a lot of our communities that hire realtors to sell for them. And it's usually done with the pre-owned homes. When they start wanting to engage in new home sales, then they're going to have to license that realtor as a salesperson for them, and then it falls under other laws,
okay.
That transaction itself.
Thank you again for your time. If you need any more information, please go to our website at parealtor.org.